He said, let's get some work done. All right, Dad. The transfer window brings around many more rumours than actual signings. And so for the big clubs, when they can't sign all the players or they can't shell out the big money because of financial fair play rulings or something else like that, well, what are they going to do? That's what I'm here to do today. Bring you all the 10 alternative options, many of them cheaper, for the top clubs to sign. Starting off at number 10, and we go with Arsenal. Now, they've been linked to Romas Cengiz Ünder. The Turkish under-21 international has been in fine form, however, only in patches. He's not really consistent, and to be honest, with the club asking for around £50 million for him, Arsenal could do much better off by promoting from within. I don't see why they don't just wait until the end of the season when they can bring Reiss Nelson back for a good loan at Hoffenheim and play him in the first team. We've all seen what's happening with Jadon Sancho, the youngster who was just in Manchester City's reserves, left, got given the chance, and now his potential has skyrocketed and he's probably one of the best wingers in Europe. The same thing could happen to Reiss Nelson and it will save Arsenal £50 million. But next up is to a striker who almost seems to be forgotten because he doesn't play for one of the big boys in Italy. Now, I know that both of his forays into European football outside of Serie A have been pretty unsuccessful, both with Sevilla and Dortmund, but make no mistake, Ciro Immobile is a top striker. Last season, he was joint leading scorer in Serie A with Mauro Icardi with 29 goals, and the fact that he's half the price makes him an amazing signing. Now, Chelsea have been linked with every striker under the sun because they desperately need one, none more so than Mauro Icardi. However, are they going to shell out 100 million for Icardi, or maybe even less than half of that, around 45 million for Ciro Immobile? As I said before, I know that Immobile outside of Serie A hasn't been too good, but in the last few years for Lazio, he scored over 60 goals and been an incredible player in the Europa League as well. So Chelsea could do no worse than signing him for less than half the money they would Icardi, and this while still having a top player on their hands. Whether or not he'll leave is a different question, but in the last 10 years, Lazio have qualified once for the Champions League, and even then that ended at the qualifying rounds for the group stage. Aside from that, they've only made the quarter-final of the Europa League and never made it any further, so a chance to play in London, in the Premier League, and with a top club like Chelsea will probably be too good to turn down. In at number 8 is James Rodriguez to Arsenal, where they could be far better off by signing a young Barcelona startlet. I say young, he's now 25, but such as the draw to La Masia, that players often feel very loyal to Barcelona even if they aren't getting the first team football. Dennis Suarez has made the amount of appearances that you'd expect from a youngster, but he should be well into his career by now. With the James deal, apparently Arsenal have had a £63 million bid accepted by Real Madrid, even though James is on loan at Bayern Munich. But why would you waste all that money when you can get Dennis Suarez in, even if it's on loan for the rest of the season? He went to Villarreal and then Barcelona signed him back because they clearly saw that he still had unfulfilled potential. So it shows you that he's a decent player. However, he's made 2 league starts in La Liga this year, and that's just not really good enough for him. He needs to be kicking on. So a move to somewhere like Arsenal, where they play the kind of attractive football that Dennis Suarez is used to, could seem a perfect fit. As for James, well, as mentioned before, 63 million is quite a lot for him. Personally, I think that he's been overhyped ever since that fantastic World Cup back in 2014. He didn't always produce the goods for Real Madrid and so got shifted out on loan. But whilst he's been at Bayern Munich, he was fantastic in their domestic title winning last year. However, he's always injury prone. This is proven in the fact that during his whole career, James Rodriguez has only played more than 30 games in a league season once. That's once in about 11 seasons of professional football. Into number 7, and it's a rejuvenated Manchester United who look pretty good in attack aside from the big Belgian Romelu Lukaku. Despite Mourinho leaving and the rest of the team seeming to up their game, Lukaku still is yet to reach the targets that he's probably set for himself and the heights that many expected of him after a £75 million move. Now, I know Manchester United are the type of club to be linked with everyone. There's Benzema, there's Icardi, there's Werner, there's a few other players mentioned in there, but for me, I think they could save all of that money and promote from within, much like with Arsenal, with 17-year-old Mason Greenwood. Now, I know what you're going to say, how are you going to promote a 17-year-old to a starting role? I'm not necessarily he could be a starting option, but look what happened when they promoted Marcus Rashford a few years ago. He was in the England squad for the Euros by the end of the season, and that was only about 4 months after his debut. It's proof that when you give the youngsters a chance, they could turn out to be more than expected. But I'm not just throwing Greenwood's name in there for the hell of it. This season with United's youth teams, he's got 20 goals in 17 games across all competitions. So with that said, it's no surprise that he's been called up to the first team training camp in Dubai over the January period. Who knows, maybe by doing this, United could unearth a new talent for them, a new talent for England, and save themselves a few quid whilst they're at it. And next up on this list is by far the most ridiculous transfer rumour I think I've heard this window. Actually, it's only second to Philippe Coutinho leaving Barcelona to go to Manchester United. That I don't think will ever happen. But 80 million for Real Madrid left-back Theo Hernandez to Bayern Munich? Surely not. The guy has barely played since joining Real. Yes, he was part of a Champions League winning team last season, but he only made 13 appearances for Real Madrid in all competitions. So much so that he's been moved out to Real Sociedad on loan this season, and they're struggling down in 12th. I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means, and of course it's always difficult to overtake Marcelo, who's been one of the best left-backs in the world for the last decade. However, Theo Hernandez is not worth 80 million. Bayern Munich could do so much better than that, maybe by signing Junior Firpo from Real Betis. Now I know I probably mentioned his name wrong there, but you know exactly who I'm talking about. He's the marauding left back and left winger who's been in sensational form for Betis as they've cruised to the last 32 of the Europa League and currently sit in 6th position, just 4 points behind Real Madrid. And let's not forget he also scored a fantastic goal as Real Betis won 4-3 at the Nou Camp this season. It's no wonder that big teams have been mentioned alongside him throughout the campaign, and so if Bayern are willing to spend 80 million on an unproven left back in all cases, they might as well go for Firpo for around 35. And next up, as we reach the halfway point in this video, we have a big name, a massive name, one of the biggest in world football at the moment, Eden Hazard and his move to Real Madrid. Now, we all know that Real Madrid can pretty much afford anyone on the planet, but 150 million is a massive amount of money by any account. And, well, are they really going to splash it out? I can't see it happening in the January transfer window, but potentially in the summer. However, if they don't want to go for Hazard, or if I believe more importantly they should identify a striker to replace the goals that Ronaldo brought, they should stick with Vinicius Jr. From what I've seen since Santiago Solari's come in, Junior's been given far more chances in the first team and he's made the most of it. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely not as good as Hazard, he's definitely not the complete article just yet. But at 18 years old, he has a hell of a lot going for him. He's quick, he's fantastic on both feet, he's good at dribbling, and his technique is second to none. So why not give him an extended run in the team and see if he can blossom into a top player instead of spending 150 million on a guy who may not even replace the goals consistently. As with Hazard as well, again, not doubting his talent, he is 28 years old now. 150 million for a 28-year-old, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who's going to spend that kind of money on any other player, regardless of how good they are at that age. Now, the obvious exception to that is Ronaldo, who was signed for 100 million at age 33, but let's not pretend that that wasn't part business as well. The marketing value of Ronaldo outside of football pretty much covers the whole transfer fee. Stick with Vinicius Jr. Real Madrid and you could have the new Neymar on your hands. Talking of Vinicius Jr. though, such is my belief in him, I think you guys will have the same opinion as me. So let me know right here, where I'm going to leave a little poll, to let me know if you think that Vinicius Jr. can really reach the heights of Neymar, his Brazilian compatriot. And next up, we head to Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea are apparently lining up a £45 million move from Nicola Barella from Cagliari in Serie A. This is something that I don't quite understand, given the fact they have Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I'm not even saying it from an English point of view, but what does the guy have to do to get a run of games in the first team at Chelsea? He's an absolute physical unit. He can play with both feet, he can head the ball, he's got some pretty decent passing, and he's got an absolute engine on him. So imagine his face when Fabregas leaves, he thinks he's got more chance in the first team, only for a £45 million signing to come in. Now, I understand that Chelsea want to replace Fabregas. If he goes, they want to bring someone else in. However, surely with an old player who doesn't get that many chances, you're not going to then bring in a first team quality player to replace him. We've already got someone like Loftus-Cheek who is first team ready. I know Verrill is probably a fantastic player and has been very impressive with Cagliari, such is the nature of the transfer rumour for such a big fee to Chelsea. However, personally, I really think that they should be giving Ruben Loftus-Cheek more of a chance. They've sent him out on loan a few times and played him sporadically in games, but why not give him the rest of the season to prove his worth? If he doesn't do anything by the summer, well, maybe you can look at somewhere else, but for now, it seems pretty pointless. Next up on the list, and to Manchester United, who have, of course, been linked with a huge move for a player. Coulibaly for £91 million. Now, 91 million for a defender is absolutely ridiculous, even if he is one of the best in Europe. So why not spend a third of that money, wait until the summer, and bring in Kostas Manolas from Roma instead? Granted, they're not getting quite the same player as they would with Coulibaly, but is he really worth that kind of extravagant transfer fee? The problem is that 91 million will then set the precedent for the rest of the defenders. And if Coulibaly doesn't turn out to be as good as they thought, well, they're going to look pretty foolish. As with Manolas for 32 million, which is apparently his transfer release clause in the summer, well, that's pretty much a no-brainer. You're not going to get much more of a risk-free transfer without actually paying some money anywhere else. The thing is with Manolas is that his transfer release fee doesn't actually come into play until February. This is obviously to stop Roma losing one of their prized assets for a relatively cheap fee in January. So if Man United can hold on and close their checkbook for just a few more months, not spend the 91 million on Coulibaly, they could have a real deal on their hands in the summer. And talking of defenders on the move, our next player comes from Ajax, potentially to Barcelona, but I think there's a better deal out there for them. Matthijs de Ligt could be on his way out of Ajax, but only if his agent Mino Raiola gets all the money that he wants. Apparently, the deal worth around £60 million is dependent on Raiola getting 10 million in fees. This on top of the fact that he wants his client to sign a 5-year, €12 million a year deal at the Nou Camp. So with those off-putting numbers flying about, why don't Barcelona shut the door on Raiola, tell him to go away and come back with some more reasonable demands, and instead go for Tottenham's Toby Alderweireld. Alderweireld's contract being extended by Spurs for an extra year means that a clause has now been inserted into his deal that he can leave for around 25 million. Now I know he's 28 years old and Barcelona may be looking to the future with de Ligt, but 28 is hardly old in football, especially for 25 million. They're getting one of the Premier League's most consistent and brilliant defenders, and all for just a fraction of the price that de Ligt would cost. Alongside this, Barcelona have got Clement Lenglet anyway for the future, and de Ligt can always come in the years to come. Alderweireld will no doubt help steady the ship where the injury-prone likes of Umtiti and Vermaelen haven't been appearing so regularly for Barcelona. It'll obviously be seen as a more short-term piece of business by Barcelona, but with the fair play regulations cranking down on anyone who is spending a bit too much money, it would probably make sense for them to knock a massive chunk of money off their bill by going for Alderweireld instead of de Ligt. And talking of Ajax stars leaving, the next one is Frenkie de Jong. Now, a few weeks ago, he was linked with a massive deal to PSG worth about £80 million. However, it does look like Barcelona are now willing to swoop in and steal de Jong away from PSG's grasp. But fear not, PSG, you could have an equally as good player for not so much money in de Jong's Ajax teammate Donny van de Beek. Now, the Dutch player actually plays a little bit further forward than de Jong does. De Jong is more of a deep line playmaker, whereas van de Beek can often get into the box. But it's proven that he is equally as good, if not better, as helping the attack, with his 4 goals this season, the same as de Jong, and 4 more assists than de Jong has got. De Jong and van de Beek are exactly the same age, but van de Beek's available for about £35 million. That is a snip of the price that PSG were willing to pay for de Jong. Now, I don't really think van de Beek's going to go on to be as successful for de Jong. Having said that, if PSG are going to lose out on big targets, they may need to go for someone just a bit lesser known. Now, I'm not saying van de Beek isn't as good as de Jong at the moment, but de Jong's the one who's stealing all the limelight, so whilst van de Beek quietly goes about his business, PSG could also quietly go about theirs and bring in someone for much cheaper. So there you have it, the alternative signings for some of the big clubs in the January transfer window and beyond. But what do you make of this top 10? Who would your alternative signings be for all of the names that I've just mentioned? Will some of the players actually move, or do you think I'm talking absolute rubbish and completely disagree with some of the chosen signings? Let me know in the comment section below. Of course, hit the like button whilst you're there, and you can also click here to check out all of the other videos on Onefootball. But until next time, I will see you guys later.